Hey Eugene.
Yeah?
What up? Okay.
All right, welcome back to What Up Eugene. I am your host Lars Schweighauser, and I'm joined, as always, every single week by Dan Koss.
Hello.
Now, of course, this is season 2, which is so exciting, and we have a whole lot of new stuff to talk about, and a whole lot of stuff that didn't happen, stuff that's different. One thing that's different is that this show will be in Google Play and iTunes. The way we made that happen is by using mostly music from the Creative Commons. We did not license this show under the Creative Commons. We wanted to, and ultimately what it came down to is that we have people come in and record music for us, which is really cool, and we like to use that for break music. And it's not our songs. We can't release that under Creative Commons. So this show is not Creative Commons, but you can pretty much feel free to use any of it in whatever projects you want. We're not going to pursue legal action, except for the break music, which is, of course, stuff we don't own. Although, if you do like a Nazi-themed peer-reviewed beer review, we might get kind of upset. So,
Yeah.
The other difference is that we don't have guest intros anymore, because those were pretty much always, I would say, they had copyrighted music almost every time.
But more importantly, they were time-consuming.
And they were not good.
Well,
that was the worst part, is how bad they were.
Out of our 16 original guests, there was at least 3 to 4 good
I liked
intros.
the Leo one. That one was really good.
Which one's the Leo one?
It was the, like, Sagittarius,
yeah.
Gemini.
Shout out to the
Anyways.
Michael intro. That was a great one, too.
Oh, that was too. So, here's the deal. We've got our guest from, I believe, episode 2 coming back. This is our first return guest, if you don't count that whole back-to-back thing we did with Brent. And that's Jeronemo. And we don't have an intro for him, but he said, "Hey, Eugene," and what up in the intro?
That's how we might be doing it. It's
that
very
could be our
experimental
format.
at this point. How's it going, Geronimo?
And that's the only place where you'll hear my voice.
You know what? You know what we're going to do? I'm
I
just
am going to cut you out for the rest of the show.
Okay.
I'm going to say, what up?
What up?
That's how we open it to the guest.
We're doing a couple other new things. One is that we're using a different set of mics. Dan and I are talking into 57s. I've heard that they're good for recording vocals. In fact, so good that it's the mic the White House uses. Now, who knows? Under the current administration, maybe that means nothing. But historically, Obama sounded great talking into this mic. We also have a very fancy guest mic, so you're going to get real creamy vocals from every guest we have coming in for the rest of the show.
Yeah, whether or not my voice is actually creamy, right?
I fake it with the mic.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It sounds creamy. Geronimo, you just got back from something tonight. Where were you at?
We do something every Thursday for the game dev stuff. We just meet up and drink, basically.
For those who don't know, Geronimo is a game developer here in Eugene,
Hold
Oregon.
on. Daniel, are you implying that there is someone who's listening to this episode right now and has not listened to the 17 other episodes and the 2 pilots and the 6 episodes of Dan's Bag we recorded?
Guilty of that.
Let's just do a little test here. Did you listen to your own episode, Geronimo?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, there
you probably
you go.
also didn't share it. Most people
No,
they say-
I think he shared it.
Did he?
I don't
Some
know.
people
Maybe
say
I
they're going
have.
to share it and never do.
I think
All
I
of
did
them.
share it. I don't share very
trust
many
you.
things on Facebook.
Well, we'll have to put him
No,
on the
it's
wall of shame. We should put a
It's
wall of
just
shame.
my
on
the wall
dirty
of
wall.
shame that is like nothing? Like, what?
Yeah, there's
I have
nothing
no
on these
shame.
walls.
I am shameless, Well, so Geronimo is a game developer. We talked about that last time, and since it's been about 4 months, we figured you have new projects to talk about.
Yeah. I have
And
projects I can talk about,
That's
and
why
I have
you're
projects
here.
I can't talk about, basically. But I have a project that's pretty cool. Coming up, we're probably show it off this Saturday at Arcade Rodeo.
There's an Arcade Rodeo, folks, over at... Now it's called the Game Pub. Prior to that, it was the Shoryuken League.
You know what? Every single time, they're like, "What the fuck is that place?" And I'm like, "Shuriken League," and they're like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
Every time. Weird rebrand is all I'm gonna say.
So this Saturday...
I think they should definitely think about coming up with a pun, or like I think my favorite game pub, right? I feel like it's an umbrella term rather than like a specific name. My favorite game pub name is Ground Control, which is a place in Portland.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Ground
really,
Control.
really good.
Ground Control is great. I think Level Up did it. They're doing everything
Level Up.
right.
Level Up's a good
sounds
name too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have as many
Um,
games as...
But I
Ground
feel like
Control.
they've missed the opportunity to name themselves something that's a little bit more accessible, but still funny and interesting.
Yeah, Game Pub's very accessible, but there's no fun there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, or even like Blair Alley. It doesn't tell you, unless you say, like, I think it's called Blair Alley Arcade if you say the whole thing. It doesn't tell you necessarily what it is, but because we only have 3 barcades, if you say Blair Alley, everyone knows what you're talking about, and the location is part of the name. So, like Game Pub, if I didn't know right that's Shuriken League, I wouldn't know what you're talking about, and I wouldn't know where it is either, right?
Yeah.
You said meet me at Game Pub, I'd have to be like, where the fuck is that shit?
Let's do this right now. Everyone on the spot. You're on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Come up with your new name for Game Pub. I came up with one just based on location.
Mm-hmm.
Keezy Mode.
That's fucking brilliant.
It's easy mode, and it's right there by the Keezy Square.
Oh my god,
I guess that could work. Yeah.
That's wow. Okay.
No, I was just thinking of like Missile Command,
Missile Command.
just because like I was already thinking of ground control.
Yeah, Missile Command sounds like you head over to Missile Command. That's kind of cool.
What about like the potion pot or something? You know, it kind of sounds Harry Potter-ish, but it kind of sounds like
It's
an
like
RPG.
the pint pot.
Yeah,
Oh,
I feel like
yeah,
you don't
I
want to
guess-
invite that crowd.
No, well, I meant, you know, because it's like what like elixir or something. Just because, whatever.
What do you call the place where you go in like Legend of Zelda to buy potions and stuff?
The shop.
The shop, yeah, that doesn't work.
No.
Like the potion store, the old witch who sells you the blue and the red potion.
I feel like the general store would be like a really good bar, but it's not video game themed, right?
Yeah.
It's Western themed at the general store. How about this? Who's the guy from, I think it was Resident Evil, who like would open his trench coat and say, "What are you
man.
buying?"
I don't know.
Forget that.
I was gonna say, like,
guy's
what are
name.
the stores called in Fallout too, or like the vending machines in BioShock? What are those called? I feel like there's a lot of good stores in video games. I just can't think of any.
They could just call it Fight Club.
Fight Club, the game.
Well, I think that they definitely have a specific territory that they occupy in town where no one else is really doing. Where you can play like at-home console games, or you can play online multiplayer games at a place where you can drink beer in public.
Mm-hmm. You can socialize, and it's cool too because they have the consoles. You can bring your own games, and you can bring your own console. Like you could bring a Switch if you wanted to, because they have the TVs. So
Yeah, they're super chill. Like whenever we set up events with them, it's like we basically just walk in with our laptops and plug them into the TVs, and we're like, "Hey, we'll play a game."
So when you say you're setting up the events, like in the past, Shoryuken League has hosted indie game night where the public could come and test out games that local developers
test night, yeah.
Indie game test night. And is Arcade Rodeo just
playtest
a
night.
new name for it, or is Arcade Rodeo something different?
Arcade Rodeo is like is Britt Brady's like little thing. I think he's basically just like a one-off thing.
It's
that he wants to
Britt
do.
Brady, and he's like one of the more prominent game developers here in
One of the
Eugene.
more successful, yeah.
Yeah.
town.
Is he Cowboy Color or Color Cowboy?
Cowboy Color.
Cowboy
yeah.
Color, yeah.
Him and oh man, I can't remember people's names right now.
Starts with a C, doesn't it?
Britton Colin.
Yeah, got it. I'm so proud of myself. Yeah, those guys are cool, and so they're setting it up, and they're making it more of a theme, so people are
Yeah,
more
so
engaged.
Arcade Rodeo is going to be a thing where every video game that's being displayed was made specifically for that event.
Oh, cool.
And every video game is supposed to be at least 4-player multiplayer.
I like
Local
that.
multiplayer, right? So like everybody can sit down and play the game. And I think that's super fucking smart.
That's
Because-
way better, yeah.
Because generally speaking, like that venue and that environment is best for like local multiplayer games. Because it maximizes the amount of people that can like engage and actually do something while they're looking at what's going on. I've shown a fair amount of single player games there, and people are interested and they want to play, but they have to wait for the person to stop playing.
There's that, and they feel kind of awkward making their friends wait around them while they play the game. And I've
Exactly.
noticed that. That's the one thing
It makes
Did you come
people
to the
feel
last one?
uncomfortable.
I came with you guys to Starlight, and that's definitely something because Dan and I were both
Oh
playing
yeah,
the game
you
on a
were at
laptop.
the VR thing.
Yeah, and we were playing the game.
Or
Well,
it's not the VR thing.
you were doing a VR game.
Yeah.
The game we played on a laptop, we both took turns playing and trying to learn the mechanics, which were very confusing. But it was kind of like backseat gaming because you were like, "Ooh, try that." It's like, well, you try it, but you can only play one at a time.
Right.
You're talking about Kite. You played Kite.
I played a few games. There was one game where the guy gave me a business card, but I was trying to be nice.
Did it have a
was-
Steam code on the back?
I don't. Probably. It was so intense with the graphics. There was like 1,000 things happening on the screen
Probably
and the
Kite.
colors.
Kite's
I-
pretty sweet. I really
I
like
wanted
James.
to be like politely tell him he needed to tone it
You're talking
down
about James Treneman.
about 100%, but I just didn't tell him that. 'cause
I think
don't
you're
like
talking about Kite.
confrontation.
I thought Kite was great. It's not my kind of game. I'm more of a platformer. Someone had a game there where I think you like.
The game I'm talking about is the platform.
What's the game where you
played.
drilled through the ground
Yeah,
and then you
that
shot
one.
out? I like that one a lot.
It was a sweet mechanic, but the tutorial sucked dick. It did not tell you at all. You had to just guess how to play the game.
Very critical.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's what happened, right? It's not Mega Mega Man X, but
It's hard to make
he
a
knew,
really good tutorial.
Well, I mean, there was just nothing, but he knew that was something that needed to be added. But
Generally speaking, you don't make a tutorial until it's like near the end of the progression
Right.
of the game because
Well,
otherwise, because you need to know what you need to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
if you're changing the mechanics in the middle of the game and you've already made the tutorial, then you have to remake the tutorial. So there's no reason that you would do it as a first thing, right?
That all makes sense. The problem was that this was just, like, the guy wasn't near the laptop. The laptop was just there. People could come up and play it. So you just come up and play it, and there's no one there to tell you the mechanics. And the mechanics don't teach themselves to you.
So
that is a good place to have a tutorial. If you're showing your game in public,
Sure.
you might want to.
But okay, so here's an interesting thing that maybe you haven't thought about.
Yeah.
What if he's looking to see what he needs to teach people?
Sure. I mean, and that's what I kind of tried to tell him. I was like, this one mechanic, like, it's not clear that this works this way. And I think that's fine. But that was also like, that's my only complaint about the game. Otherwise, the game was pretty well. Like the game, it was a fun game. It was a cool, unique mechanic.
Right. Because I found myself in a position where I'm like across the room or something, and I'm watching somebody play my video game, and I don't want to go over and tell them how to solve a problem. Yeah. Because I want to see how long and if they quit and stuff like that. Like, this is like really informative meta information about how or if I should change certain aspects of the game, but it does require somebody's like input and like level of frustration.
Right, and they have to, yeah.
I remember when we worked on a game together, the puzzle game, we put tutorials in there and people skipped them or really didn't pay attention.
Right.
And
I mean, that was a real good learning experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Nobody reads stuff.
It was weird because it was like a 5-word sentence of how the game worked, and they didn't even read it, and then they're like, I don't get it. And we're like,
are you trying to get it?
You can only do so much, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of games, are we ready to move on to a game?
No, we're not, because there's a segment that we always start with and we haven't gotten to yet.
Oh, snap.
And that is this one here.
The peer-reviewed
Beer Review.
Now, you may have noticed that is just slightly different, but almost the same as the theme from before. And that's because what we did is use Creative Commons music. So it's still Vivaldi's Spring, but it's a slightly different recording. It's different other music. And we had to re-record Dan's vocals because the original track was lost.
You know when you go to Redbox and you see that there's a movie that looks like Frozen, but it's not, and they call it like Arctic Tundra?
Oh, yeah. Or what was the... it was like Paul Blart, and then there was the other Mallcat movie that came out at the same time.
Yeah. That intro... is the knockoff version of Frozen.
We will try to tighten that up.
There's
something weird about that version of Vivaldi Spring. There's like a different instrument we don't like. So we're gonna I still have the original file, and we're gonna try to find nicer Creative Commons music. But for now, the other difference with the peer-reviewed beer review is that we're not doing the Tumblr anymore. It was a very fun experience. But it took a lot of Dan's time to actually make the graphic designs.
It was stressful. The big audience I had for that.
And with the big feedback that we got from Mark Davis on our last episode that we kind of knew was that we had...
Oh, you have Mark Davis here?
Oh, yeah, we have good get, right?
God damn it.
By the way, that episode...
I mean, he's willing to do some
That episode got
cool
almost
stuff.
60 views. That's the most we've ever had, like 58 views.
Well, yeah, because he runs Eugene Tech stuff.
Huge Tech?
Yeah, but his big thing was that, like, we had an email address and a SoundCloud and 2 different Tumblrs and an Instagram, and it was all different URLs, and it was too much. So the show is so simple now. You go to whatupeugene.tumblr.com. That's where you get all the links. That's where you get all of the information. And then if you want to find the SoundCloud, or if you want to find me, I'm at Lars in the Studio. It's soundcloud.com/Lars in the Studio. I'm on YouTube as Lars in the Studio. It's just one thing. It's super simple, super plain. We're going into the beer review. We're not doing the graphics anymore, but the scores and the reviews will be available on whatupeugene.tumblr.com.
Shout out to all the supporters of the beer review. This one's for you.
There are none. There are no supporters. I buy the beer myself.
There were 5, including me. Well, we're drinking here, let me just tell you. We got Deschutes Brewery. You may know of them. They're from Bend, Oregon.
Now, everyone else has been drinking this throughout the episode, and I actually haven't had a sip yet, so I have no opinion pre-formulated.
This is a classic
I think
Black
that's
Butte Porter.
I think that's going to heavily affect your opinion.
Yeah, well, I'm going to formulate my opinion now.
I'm just going to chug it. Whoa.
Well, so I like Deschutes. I like most of their beers. I've never had their porter, and I'm not generally a porter person. There's something about it's not. I don't mind that they're super dark. It's just the kind of thickness of the taste. But I ran out of IPAs that I hadn't tried at Capella's, so I got something different to try.
Well, this was the right night to do that.
Jeronemo is a porter man.
Yeah, I really like dark beers.
Oh, you're a porter man. Do you like shower beer?
Shower beer?
It's just drinking a beer in the shower.
It's drinking a beer in the shower. Have you ever done that?
No.
Geronimo.
The trick is, and this is so important, do not do it with a glass bottle. You will drop it and just cut the shit out of your feet, or so I've heard. I've never done it myself.
Really?
It's a possibility. It's a real risk. I would say I got a Hydro Flask, just pour a beer in that bad boy, or do a can if you have to.
Anyway, shower beer. I know it sounds dumb. You're like, what? You just drinking a beer in the shower? Mm-hmm. There's something different about it, Geronimo. It's if you got a hot shower going and you're in the beer, you drink it and something magical happens, and I can't explain it. There are whole websites dedicated to
subreddit.
shower
There's a subreddit
beers.
for it. Don't oversell
There's a subreddit for everything.
There's r/everything.
Yeah. So try that next time you take a shower.
Or a beer.
I don't know. Sounds dangerous.
The thing is that Dan likes to drink and drive, so having a beer first thing in the morning really goes for his attitude.
You probably shouldn't be saying that.
Oh, I say it every time.
I'm going to be the first one to drop the F word in 2018. Fuck you.
Oh, man. That's the only F word for the entire podcast. We're like BoJack Horseman.
You're like, everybody. Until now, nobody has broken the seal.
Well, as you know, we have our ratings, and I've been drinking this for a while, so I'm ready to give my rating now.
What is the alcohol per volume? Oh, 5.2.
Like 5%.
Well, what is your rating, Dan?
I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 Lars. Let's kick off the year with a high rating.
That's a nice one. I guess we're gonna keep doing the ratings. We're just not doing graphics for them anymore. So.
Oh, are we?
We're skipping the graphics.
Yeah. Oh no, I know we're skipping graphics. Well, but we're still giving ratings, right?
Well, you just gave it 4 out of 5, so we might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Let me take another sip here. I like that. I don't hate anything about that. That's pleasant.
You're not even halfway through that bottle.
No, I've just had a couple sips. Well, sure. I've been drinking some wine.
You really should drink the whole bottle and then see what you think.
Okay, well, you give us your rating, and I'll just try to chug this.
So my rating, I guess, is a little bit complex because I've drunk this beer quite a bit before, and I've had it mostly not in a bottle. I've had it on tap, like several years ago. And it was one of my favorite beers to drink. It was like my go-to.
Porters, by the way, are not the correct beer for chugging. And I know this, and I'm still trying to do it.
I don't know. But, yeah. I really, really liked this beer. But about, I don't know, several months ago, maybe like sometime in the middle of 2016, I'm pretty sure that they were acquired by somebody, one of the large breweries or manufacturers like Budweiser or whatever, and they just have now, and I could be the bottle.
I can't do it.
It could be the bottle. It could be the way they make it, but I suspect it's the way they make it. This beer is a lot more harsh on the onset, and in its previous incarnation, I would give it a 5 out of 5. Right, wow. Like I would give it a really good rating. Very drinkable, very good, hearty, dark beer. But now it feels lighter and it feels more acidic, and that drops it down a point for me.
So it's
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. Should we do like an aggregate review and just take all of our opinions and make one succinct group review?
We could do that. That
might be the fastest way. And I would still like to use the Lars system.
What are you drinking now?
Yeah, I've got a bottle of wine that I can.
Why'd you switch to the wine? Why'd you switch to the wine?
You're just like, I can't do this.
I gotta get that taste out of my mouth.
Do you not like it?
No, you know what? I liked it. I liked it earlier today, about 5 minutes ago. I liked it, and then Geronimo said I should drink the whole bottle. And
but I'm saying you should give it time. That's the thing with a dark beer.
Right,
I did not tell you to chug it. I told you should give your review when you're about halfway through.
Well, I'm halfway through now, and I was liking it. It was gonna be at 200 stars, but I'm not. I can't. Okay, let me tell you a story.
Oh, God.
I have a friend who likes Guinness. I'm not a huge fan, but he said, I'm gonna buy you guys all a Guinness. There were 4 of us, him included. So he bought 4 Guinness, and I'm not gonna say no to a free beer. I don't know. It was at Jameson, so however they served their Guinness.
I don't know if Jameson's does nitros or not.
It was foamy, but I don't know if it was nitro.
Nitro usually is okay, so when something is carbonated?
Yeah.
It feels acidic and it's bubbly and it bubbles off your tongue and then it's okay, it's over.
Yeah.
something on nitro is like really smooth.
Mm-hmm.
It's like foamy, but it's also just like
I don't think it was on nitro.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but
that's the way it's supposed to be served.
anyways, we had 4 of these, but my friends are all bitches, and none of the... Well, maybe the friend who got the Guinness finished it, but the other 2 didn't finish it, and I was like halfway done with mine when we wanted to go to a new bar. And I'm a drink finisher. I finish drinks. It's cheap, and it takes me a lot of alcohol to get anywhere. So my 2 friends and my own drink needed to be finished, so I had to drink like 3 halves of a Guinness, or a Guinness and a half, if you will, very quickly.
Sure.
And it was an incredibly unpleasant experience. And I would say that in general, for me, porters are not beers I drink quickly. So this was probably...
not intended
I would
to be
call this a
drunk
200-star
quickly.
drink, but I'm giving it 100 stars for having to drink it quickly.
And don't you blame that on me.
I 100% blame it on you.
Wow,
according to my
true.
Metacritic math,
Yeah, do it.
that gives this, for the group, for the review,
Like a 3.5?
3.5 out of 5 Lars. And we're going to use the Lars system.
That's
Okay.
fine.
And I'm going to write
That's
this
fine.
down.
Oh yes, on the
On his hand. This is not an official review, but I have been drinking this Reserve de Morande wine. You may have heard about it in an episode of Drinking with Lars, which is the vlog I
God
do.
damn it, this isn't the wine review.
Well, whatever.
This isn't the time.
It's fine. It's
I love that
fine.
he just set out the beer, just started chugging wine. It's
a Cabernet Merlot. I chug wine on camera.
and yet you say like, oh, but beers, man, those
No,
are slow
this beer-
drinks.
No, this porter's. This porter's a slow drink.
no, but wines, yeah, you just
Red-
chug that shit right there.
Red wine is a chug drink. I would... Hold on.
What? You fucking no.
Goddamn wino.
Why?
If you had a car, you would drink and drive wine. all
How
the
could
time.
you? How
It
could you
upsets
say?
people.
How could you call that 100 stars out of like 200 or whatever? But then like go and chug wine like that.
Because it upsets people and it's easy for me to do. And I'm only giving this 75 stars. It's not good.
In conclusion, Deschutes Brewery, Black Beet
I guess
Porter,
the
3.5
delta
out
is
of
a little
5.
bit not as big
Lars.
as if you're already starting with a wine that's kind of gross.
God, that is a gross wine. You know what? It does not age well.
Well, maybe it's because you started chugging it.
Yeah, well, I don't need you to tell me how to drink wine. This isn't...
I think maybe you do.
Let's... I don't think we have time for the game show in this half, so let's talk...
Game show.
But there's a game
so
show.
interested
There's
in
always a
Yeah.
game show. You're going to have to wait till after
I
the
like
break.
games. I make games. I like games.
You make
Wanna play
games?
games?
Well, tell us
Tell us about a game
All right.
in 5 to 8 minutes.
your game. The game that you're
5 to 8 minutes.
the game that you're going to be presenting this Saturday at the Arcade Rodeo.
All right.
Sell it to
well,
us now.
it's not finished.
Oh, okay.
So, just rushing to get it finished. My boyfriend did all the art for it, which is pretty sweet.
Does he have an
Harlan
Instagram?
does game art.
Well, not really. This is kind of like he does
It's
he does
exclusive.
still art usually, so there's no
Oh.
animation stuff. So I'll probably just like fake it, like do some weird animation stuff. But he does 2D art, generally speaking.
Cool.
So this is like maybe like the second time that I tried to get him to make game art. But yeah, basically it's just like the idea is 2 like cowboys that were playing like poker or whatever were both cheating, and then they found out the other person was cheating, and they stood up and they just started just pulled out their guns, started shooting at each other, right? The game revolves around controlling the bullets that they shoot. So each player controls an individual bullet,
Whoa.
and the bullets like move pretty slow. They're like they kind of move around,
Sure.
and they bounce off. You can like if you smack into another bullet like another player, then you like kind of bounce off each other and whatever. But the point is that you're trying to get your bullet onto like the hand of the person who's holding the guns on the other side, and that's how you score points. And it's like 2v2, right? So
Okay.
you have 2 bullets like moving around,
Whoa.
smacking into each other and stuff.
How do you control the bullets separately, or how does that work?
Is it 2
Well,
controllers?
it's 4 player, right? So it's
Oh, okay.
2 players versus 2 other players.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So it's like Pong, but you want to hit the paddle.
It's like
That's how Pong is.
No, because
well, you
wanna get past
you
them
want to get
into the
past that
goal.
paddle. Yeah.
if
I
it's
guess
like
that's true.
Pong, it's like Pong, but
But you
4 player,
control the
and you
ball.
don't control the paddle, you control the ball.
that is.
you wanna
And
hit
there
the
are
paddle
4
now.
balls.
I'm not trying to compare. I hate when people try to compare stuff, like especially when I do animation stuff. People will be like, "Oh, so it's like Pixar," and I'm like, "No, it's not. Why are you saying that?" I was just trying to break it down as best that I could understand. Like when I play a new board game, when we're trying to break down the mechanics of like a new game, we're like, "Oh, so it's like Uno but more evil," which is a game I played recently. So would you say that's pretty correct in that it's like Pong but you want to hit the paddle? And you control the ball, or no?
Yeah, kind of, I guess.
Not trying to break those mechanics down.
But it's also like team based, right? So like, I mean, and I haven't tested it that much. Again, it's still in development.
Yeah.
Until Saturday.
Until
basically.
Saturday.
Do you think you'll continue it on after the Arcade Rodeo?
I don't know. Maybe. It depends.
That's a good
I have
question.
I have a lot of projects that I need to finish and put somewhere so somebody can buy.
Are there when you do these kind of projects for that kind of jam, like the 48-hour stuff, or in this case, I don't know however long you had to do this?
I had about like a week and a half
Week and a
or
half.
2 weeks.
How many of them, or like what's the percent would you say, do you actually keep working on after the presentation?
Generally speaking, I work on most of them after, because I'll go into it and be like, hey, this is what I have to show because this is how much time I had. And then afterwards it's like, oh, but man, there was this problem. And that problem really sucked. And if I didn't have that problem, then this would be so much better. And you go in and fix that problem. And that's usually the extent at which I
Okay.
go about doing stuff.
You just do
Sometimes
little fixes.
sometimes if it's a project that I really like, I'll pick it up again and work on it for quite a bit. Like the project I work on with Dan, I worked on quite a bit after the game jam.
Are you still working on that, or because I remember afterwards I couldn't dedicate much more time to it.
Yeah, I think essentially, yeah, like that's like pretty much everything else is built, and I just need more art.
Okay. I mean, I'm.
I don't want to pressure you.
No, I know,
But
it's funny that we're saying
what
on
I'm
the
saying
podcast.
is-
I'd like to work on it again.
What I'm saying is that like there's at least right now, there's quite a bit of projects that I have in the pipeline, kind of thing, where it's like, when am I going to actually decide to work on?
Sure. Yeah. Well, no. If it's definitely the thing with anything creative that you're passionate about, if it's paying, even if you don't want to do it,
Well,
it's
everything
better to
that's
be doing
paying
it.
comes in priority.
Right. Exactly. It's like obviously nothing that I do here in the studio pays yet, so I still have to go to work 4 or 5 days a week, and that blows. But I couldn't do this at all if I wasn't doing the stuff that pays, and so it makes sense that you have to prioritize like that.
Sure. Yeah, but I think I've really sort of painted myself into a corner by creating so many projects that I want to work on.
Tell me about it. I've done that. I owe something to a lot of people out there. If Cass is listening, she knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And just so you know, Cass, it's on the back burner, but it's on the closest part of the back burner.
Well,
A good friend of mine just I had a conversation about this like last week or so. He said like there's a famous essentially quote. It's like, oh yeah, so the first 90%, yeah, you do that, and then there's the second 90%.
Oh damn.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, you get that a lot. Well, we're going to move to the break real quick, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to play a game show, and we're going to keep talking about, I guess, art and making stuff. And I'm curious at all what kind of CPU you have, and we'll talk about that in the second half.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
right? Oh, it's going to...
Well, have you heard about The Thing?
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. I think
Yeah.
for a little bit. I don't know how interesting that is, but I think it could be interesting for a minute or two.
Do you have
I know
some
some things about that thing.
I do as well, and it's interesting for me. It's not interesting for Dan. He's just going to sit in the corner.
That thing that you'll have to stay tuned for.
Oh, do you have some interesting intel about something?
Oh, yes, it's called Meltdown, but that comes after the break.
All right.
We're going to listen to a track called Switchblade, recorded by Day Hutchings right here at the studio. We recorded it for a new series I'm doing called A Part of the Art, and you will hear more about that at the end of the show. So enjoy this track.
1, 2, 3, 4. She looks so cool against the wall, a cigarette between her teeth. But you be careful, boy, 'cause she's so damn dangerous. So mind your manners or you bleed. She's a switchblade Switchblade, 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 oh yeah. She just wants some company. Why don't you ask her what she needs? A little worship never hurt no one. Just get your head between those sheets. The spirit moves in her and you hear the angels sing. Ooh. She's a switchblade, 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 switchblade.
Back to Up Eugene. We were talking throughout that whole song. It was very rude. That is a song that Dave Hutchings wrote about his girlfriend, and here's what they told me. They said the first half was about living in a different city and feeling protective and you know, kind of being upset that their girlfriend might be kind of vulnerable in the other city, and you know, wanting to write this like she's gonna fuck you up real violent song. And then the second half, they got horny. You know, they got horny and was like, I just really want to have sex with my girlfriend. And that's how that song
Gross.
goes. Yeah. But we're not talking about that. We're talking, Dan, what is the thing we're talking about?
Oh, you know what we're talking about?
Oh, Eugene, Oregon, and other cities in Oregon. Not Eugene. Other cities in Oregon with populations less than 40,000. They're gonna have to start pumping their own gas.
That's right.
And the memes are crazy.
Apparently we're freaking out. The rest of the U.S. believes we are all
We can't handle it.
panicking.
We don't understand. I don't understand how you pump. Where do you put the thing? First of all, that's my first question.
You put it in the hole.
Okay. Second question. What next? Is there
So
a trigger you pull?
so there's something relatively important about this, and is that you really don't need you can't lose your like fuel cap or whatever, because that shit's kind of dangerous if you don't have the fuel cap on there.
They didn't
And I feel
tell me
like
that.
people are just gonna like
Not once
fuck up and-
in high school did they mention that, and that is all the education I've needed to live my life
it's
in
kind of
Oregon.
important. But I feel like it's people are just gonna be like, oh shit, I lost the thing, whatever, close the thing,
Yeah.
and then their gas evaporates.
I mean, I'm positive that's going to happen because, look, I didn't close my fuel cap, and now I have no car.
Well, as we know, this is, what is it? Population under 40,000, certain counties in mostly rural
Why is
and
it
eastern
population
Oregon.
under a certain amount?
Because the whole idea is that if you're out in the middle of nowhere and
you can't hire a guy to do the thing.
and it's also like if it's late at night and you're desperate need of gas, you're gonna need to pump it, on your own. But if you're in like city areas, like high population, that's not gonna be an issue.
I have so many times I've been in a car with a friend, and they're like, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and they're like, oh shit, where am I going to get gas? And I'm like, well, there's like a gas station right on 18th, we're right there. I don't know they
gas
have
stations in Eugene
They
close
close.
really early.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
go to like the highway or something.
So I've been in this situation. I'm all for it. What the hell? Come in.
Welcome to the Eugene Trivia Prize Bucket Challenge.
Oh shit.
You're not playing that very well.
Dan was sure that would trick you. Dan was so sure. Hey, we're doing a segment. Dan, do you want to tell me a thing?
I guess this is the Eugene Trivia Prize Bucket Challenge.
I was going to say tell me to cue the music, but I cued it anyways.
Oh.
Hey, this music is in the Creative Commons because we're cheap.
Thank you, Kevin MacLeod. He's very big in the free audio community.
Yes. By the way, all the music and sounds we use that are Creative Commons, they will have links to their respective sources in the SoundCloud description for this, as well as on the Tumblr. We are not going to say all of them in the podcast because that would be such a pain in the ass.
Hey, but have you checked out my mixtape?
I don't know. Have you linked it to me?
It's on my SoundCloud, man.
I hope it's fire.
Are you following us on your SoundCloud? If your SoundCloud is following our SoundCloud, then fuck you.
Check out my
I would love to.
mixtape.
I would love to check out your mixtape. But I don't even know if you're following me on SoundCloud.
What do you do to that lamp?
I'm touching it.
All right, Lars, can you please explain to our guest how the rules of our trivia games work?
Well, I can't because I don't know this game, but I will anyways. But well, we normally play OK Noodle. I know the OK Noodle rules.
All the games are the same format.
Season 2, new game, no idea.
I feel like you're
Bold
unprepared
guess.
for this.
I'm gonna guess. You ready? You ready for my guess? I've done this for a few episodes. My guess is that there are 5 questions. My guess is that if you get 2 correct, then you are going to get a prize out of the prize bag. My guess is also that you get...
I don't know if I want anything about out of the prize
Well,
bag.
let me tell
that
you-
sounds kind of bad.
Let me tell
actually.
you. Actually, this game scales. If you get 3 right, you get 2 prizes. Every additional right is another prize. For a possible max, 5 right is 4 prizes. Now, these are not easy questions sometimes.
These are tough this time.
I'll make a wager with you.
You get a lifeline. You get me. If you don't know the answer and I do, I will answer it for you. Dan will take that lifeline away once you have 2 wins. Unless it's really hard, then he'll give it back. It's a really relaxed game. We want you to get prizes.
Okay. So
What is your wager?
Okay, so my wager is I get none of them right, and you give me all the prizes.
We cannot do that because it is so hard to come up with prizes for this stupid game.
Okay.
We literally, I just look around. What don't I need
Just
anymore?
grab shit.
Well, now I'm just resigned to not winning.
No, that's
Yeah,
what
that's
Mark
what Mark said. Yeah, he was like, I was like, the prizes aren't good. He's
And
like,
then
well, I don't want to play.
he was pleasantly surprised.
Well, that's
Yeah,
I
but
don't
also,
care.
he did terrible at that game.
I'm very competitive, but I'm just terrible at trivia.
Oh, well, that's what you have a lifeline for, isn't it?
all right, Geronimo.
Apparently.
Are you ready to begin?
Okay.
The Eugene Trivia Prize Bucket Challenge.
Whoa. Prize bucket wall challenge.
It's
Prize wall bucket challenge.
it's a bag.
I call it well, there used to be a bucket. So
All
we
right,
got rid
all
of it.
right. Question 1. Nancy's Yogurt is not only famous for their dairy delicacies, but for their family roots in Eugene's hippie culture. Whose family owns Nancy's Yogurt?
Jesus
I have
Christ,
no idea.
that's hard. What the fuck is wrong?
Hey, Lars, can
That's
you
your-
answer that question?
No, Ted, that's your first question.
He's
I have
pulling
no
it.
idea.
One more time. Really try to surmise something from this. Nancy's Yogurt is not only famous for their dairy delicacies, but for their family roots in Eugene's hippie culture. Whose family owns Nancy's Yogurt?
I mean, I get like the hippie family that I think about when I think about Eugene hippie families is the Kesey family. But I would think I would know if the Kesey family was related to Nancy's Yogurt. That's weird that I wouldn't.
I have
Well,
no
okay,
idea.
yeah, that's my guess is the Kesey family.
Are you going to be his lifeline for this?
Yeah.
Well, because he doesn't have a guess.
Okay, final answer, the Kesey family?
Yeah.
See? I'm good at video games.
Got
That's our, by the way, that's our new bell. That is, that's royalty free. The other bell was not royalty free.
What are you doing using a not royalty
I'm trying to
free
say,
bell?
you should put it in your lap for the yes and...
Oh, yeah, I'll
No.
put that in my lap. Who wants
So
me to put
basically,
the
if I
control in my lap?
answer one of the rest of the 4 questions, I get something.
You get something.
Yes, but you don't have a lifeline anymore.
So, I mean, I wasn't gonna get that anyway.
Yeah,
So it's
but-
worth it.
Alright, speaking of the Kesey family, the Keseys loved nature, and they loved Oregon. So if they were to hug a tree, as hippies do, they might want to hug the most Oregonian tree there is. Our state tree. Geronimo, what
Must
is...
be the Doug fir, right?
What is our state tree?
Should be the Doug fir, right?
Got it.
Oh,
Okay.
look at that. That's a prize.
Look at that guy. He's got a prize. He's got a prize.
That's
out of the
so
bag.
much easier than
Yeah.
the fucking
The first question was nice.
Yes. Well, you know what? Speaking of trees,
Is her name Nancy Kesey? I've never heard of this chick.
it is, I think.
Oh, good for her.
Anyway, speaking of trees,
One time at work, I was calling my no, this is related. One time at work, I called my coworker a negative Nancy, and a lady just walked by and she was like, "My name's Nancy," and I was like, "Well, are you one of the?" I didn't say this to her, but I wanted to. I was like, "Well, are you one of the negative ones? Like, why are you telling me this? This is unrelated. You're not part of the conversation, Nancy."
you can't just ask if
I'm on a
Nancy's
first-
negative.
I'm on first name basis with this chick. She told me her name. You know, I'm wearing a name tag. We know each other's first names now.
What?
Well, anyway, speaking of trees, one of Oregon's top exports is Christmas trees, but even that doesn't make Oregon's top 25 exported commodities. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, what are one of Oregon's top 5 exports?
Concrete?
You're gonna jump right in with concrete?
Ah, okay.
No. I would have accepted processors and controllers, semiconductors, wheat and messlin, or digital processing units.
That's all like 3 of the same thing, though.
They are
Speaking of conductors,
3 of those were processors, which we will talk about later.
Yeah.
Speaking of conductors, conductors hung up their hats in 1933 when this building discontinued its usage. And in 1977, it became one of Eugene's first and only locomotive eateries.
Wait,
Wait,
hold
are
on.
you-
Question.
wait, hold on. Are
Question.
you talking
Do
about
want
that
the
one
name of
restaurant?
the restaurant or the name of the original building?
I'll read it again. Speaking of conductors, conductors hung up their hats in 1933 when this building discontinued its usage, and in 1977,
restaurant.
it became one of Eugene's first and only locomotive eateries.
I just can't. Is it the
You were already his
electric
lifeline.
station?
Put your hand down, sir.
I'd like to raise my
I feel
hand.
like it's the electric station.
Final answer.
But I can't remember. I've never actually eaten there. I know what you're talking about. I just don't know the name. Electric Company. Why would it be named that if it's the train thing? It doesn't make any sense. Hey, Lars.
Let me say a word to you.
You've exhausted your
I'll
lifeline.
say one word to you. It's not a lifeline. It's unrelated to this even. But if we're thinking 1933, we might think the word coal.
Yeah, whatever. Do electric station.
Got it.
It was a good clue. I don't know if it was a good clue.
You got 2 prizes, Geronimo.
Sweet.
Do you want to shoot for 3?
What?
You have to.
What's the decision? Like, am I deciding to throw away 2 prizes to potentially get 3?
This is just
or
game show banter. That's what it is.
The
Okay.
decision? He's just like, I'm done playing your game. Like, music's done. I'm done playing your game. Your game's done.
Put that music back on. All right. Well, train stations, as you know, we're just talking about train stations. This is my segue. Train stations were a
Excellent
rough
segue.
trade,
why
but
was it? I still don't understand why it's called the electric station. It's made of
because it was electric railroad or something.
I'm guessing that they delivered coal on it, right?
No, it was
my guess,
electric.
'cause
It was an
coal
electric
power-
train.
That's bullshit. That's a bullshit reason.
Well,
It's not an electric train.
train stations were a rough trade, but not as rough as working at the Weyerhaeuser sawmill near Eugene, Oregon.
Can I just say real quick? I'd like to interrupt. First, I think it's Weyerhaeuser, but second, and more importantly, I like that you did them all related. That's a clever thing.
Yeah, no,
that's new. That's
Yeah,
clever.
you've got
Season
some good
2
narrative going on.
It took longer.
Season 2 is clever.
Although,
quit.
you could have started with something better.
Yeah, the first one was so hard.
Train stations were a rough trade, but not as rough as working at the Weyerhaeuser sawmill near Eugene, Oregon.
Okay, that's worse.
Okay. In fact, the roughness of the sawmill was described in Douglas Thompson's book, Sexual Cowboy, by a famous actor who worked and lived in Eugene, Oregon for a brief period of time in 1950. Who was that actor? I'll give you a hint.
Boy, this
The book
loop is
written
so
about this
irritating.
actor was called Sexual Cowboy.
I think that was already in the question. But yeah.
I guess. Well, okay. So he lived in 1950. The only famous cowboy actor I could think of, and I can't remember his name now, is that guy who did all those westerns, and that's no help. I know. What's his name? He did all the westerns, and he's old as shit.
I haven't seen
My grandpa liked him.
like
Oh, shit.
any westerns, honestly.
Wayne,
Dwayne the Rock
Wayne-
Johnson. in the Western.
Wayne something.
I want to see those movies.
Yeah, I would love to see Dwayne the Rock Johnson in anything. I'd watch the movie. Where
Wait,
he's
do you have a crush on this man?
Look, if
It sounds like it.
okay, well, if you haven't seen Big Mouth, then you don't even know. You don't even know. Okay.
That's a cartoon, though.
Yeah, where some people get boners about Dwayne the Rock Johnson. I'd watch a movie where he's the Tooth Fairy. That's how.
Wait,
Rock
I feel like
hard
I watched
for
that
him.
movie as well, but I can't remember.
I saw
what
the
it was.
trailer. I never watched the movie. God, Wayne something. Wayne. Nope, I can't do it. I can't help.
Wayne Gretzky.
No, that's a hockey player
know.
who was probably born after 1950.
I don't know. I'll just take a pass on this one. Can't even think of anything.
All right. Well, I guess you're gonna miss that one.
Boom.
Oh no!
The correct answer is Clint Eastwood.
Clint
Damn.
Eastwood. No way.
He worked-
I feel like
looked
you
this up.
putting fucking Wayne in my head. I couldn't
I
even.
couldn't. There's a cowboy actor named Wayne something. I swear to God.
While researching questions, I found out Clint Eastwood worked at that sawmill in Springfield, Oregon, for at least a brief time in the 50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
so
that seems to make
bizarre.
sense, but because they probably filmed somewhere around here.
Sorry, guys. Let me turn this off.
Well, Geronimo,
Huh?
you got how many prizes too?
I don't know. Did you want to know?
I thought there were 5 questions. Was
There were
that 4?
5
That was
questions.
5.
You got 3 right.
Oh.
2 is 1, and 3 is 2.
Two prizes.
Okay.
Please zip this open and
Do not look. No
blindly
looking. Go
reach in
blind.
and grab a prize.
Just
Are
feel
they
around.
just like weird little?
Yeah, they're
candies?
Yeah, whatever they are.
Grab whatever you think feels right. Oh,
That's what she said.
look at that. You got some Advil. All right.
You can't complain about.
Oh,
some
he
Advil.
grabbed the shower cap. Finally, someone
Oh,
did.
that's-
Everyone thought that was a condom.
oh, I thought.
I felt like all of them were condoms. I was like, wait, what's gonna be
shower
the
cap?
next section?
Actually, that Advil is like the same shape of a condom wrapper.
I totally thought this was like some kind of scrub brush. This is a weirdly folded shower cap. That's funny because you said shower cap finally, and I thought that was one of the new ones you added. I didn't realize. Yeah. Did you ever put the condom back in? Or?
I think the condom is in there now.
He took the condom out because
No,
he
it's
thought
not.
one guest would be offended by that. And then,
Oh, man.
And then that guest thought there was a condom in there, and I was like, no.
I would have found that a little bit more useful than these things.
You know, it's funny because the condom's been sitting on my shelf, not being useful since he took it out.
Do you want
weeks
to trade
ago.
one of your
Rough.
items for the condom?
I'll trade both of them for the...
No.
You're just like... you're like, I'm just trying to get rid of this.
You can't trade 2 items for
This
one.
is a bareback studio, and we're gonna keep it that way, okay? We don't need these condoms
This is,
in here.
I have actually changed the name on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com.
To Rog Dog?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
God damn it. What is the second half of this? Well, we talked about pumping gas. We talked about making games. Now, I have a question for you. I know it's a personal question, but I'm going to ask anyways. The computer that you use, that you make these games on, tell me about some of your specs. Like,
While you guys
I
talk
don't know,
about this,
tell me about your RAM or your graphics card, or maybe your processor. Give me a little bit of specs.
Okay, so my computer's pretty crazy, actually.
Hold up.
sweet, like 2002 model laser mouse.
Okay, you know what? First of all, because Dan is attacking my mouse, I bought a new mouse on Amazon last week. I paid like $7 for it, and it's shit. It's loud as hell. It's tiny. It's clicky. This little early 2000s gray ass mouse. It's quiet. It works, and it's nice. The only problem, and it was free. The only problem is that the cable's kind of bent. I've done some stuff to this cable that.
What's that mean?
Like it doesn't sometimes it doesn't connect. Like sometimes I plug it there's like a little kink in the cable. You know like how phone chargers get?
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't work. It would not be a good gaming mouse.
Well, Geronimo's computer, earlier when you asked,
Well, yeah, before we had a little break. We had a little unplanned break, and then we found out the name John Wayne. That's what I was thinking of. There was a Wayne. I would like full credit for that point because that's a cowboy actor.
was John Wayne the name of the actor or the name of the cowboy?
The actor John Wayne did like 100 cowboy
Yeah.
movies.
Okay.
But the actual answer is Clint Eastwood, which
Yes.
is like miles away.
Well, I don't want anything from the bag, so I will not take a prize today.
Yeah, I wonder if that was an option. Was that an option?
No, you have to take a prize.
Do I have to take
you have
every
to keep both
question?
of your prizes.
I like to note that when we were talking about computers, and Lars said, we'll talk about your computer, Geronimo kind of like leaned back in his chair and kind of like tilted his head, and he was like, which one?
Yeah, no, he's,
It was so cocky.
yeah.
I
It was a
don't know.
little off air.
I feel like you're kind of playing that up.
No,
that's
you
pretty
did it.
cocky,
You did it.
Because
Okay.
I was like, you're
Well,
like,
I mean,
where-
to be honest, I work on separate computers.
Well, okay,
different
so
things.
we were returning from that unplanned break, and Geronimo said, "Where were we?" And I said, "You were talking about your computer." And Geronimo said, "Which one?" Which is weird because before he said, "My computer's a beast" or whatever.
No, I said it was really weird. So I have one computer that I use the most, right? And it's basically like this kind of old like Office Dell. It has a good processor in it. It's got like an i7 from like a few years ago.
Oh, so you are using an Intel processor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take that hit.
My laptop's
But-
also running an i7.
But I'm borrowing a GTX 720 from a friend of mine. And the thing is like the form factor of that graphics card does not fit into the form factor of the PC.
Oh, of your case.
Right.
So you just have it like sitting on top of the case, or
So I've taken off the side of the case, and then I've taken a hacksaw to the back end where the I/O ports are, and I've stuck it in there such that it actually fits, and it works fine. The only problem is like I need a separate power source for it because
your power supply isn't.
my power supply is
strong
only
enough.
rated for like I think like I don't know.
A couple hundred watts or whatever.
Yeah, it's like 300 watts or whatever, and it's not nearly enough to power the graphics card. Plus, I don't really want to plug a fucking Chinese power supply into like a relatively good graphics card.
Sure.
Racist.
It's not racist,
They make cheap stuff, Dan. None of these microphones, but some microphones.
right? I mean, if you've ever worked with Chinese parts, you know that their specs documents are like just fucking lies.
I mean it's crazy. Usually every time I get I buy something from China, like my amp, that was probably pretty well Chinese made. It just comes with a sheet that says this is super dangerous, but in broken English.
I've never seen that.
Oh yeah, you should read
But-
the docs that came with my amp.
That would be funny. I'd like to take a look at that.
Yeah.
But the thing
You
is
would like
like
to read my docs.
so it basically has two power supplies. It has an open case. It's on its side, and it's got a graphics card that sticks outside of the main case of the body, which is probably the most janky looking computer I've ever seen.
Well, let's talk about Intel. They are not the only. A couple days ago, people thought Intel was the only CPU company really that was going to be affected, and they were affected the most by something called meltdown. But every CPU made in the last 12 years, including, of course, AMD, obviously, which is what I use, ARM, and Qualcomm, which ARM and Qualcomm are usually the ones used in cell phones. I don't know if iPhones use Intel because Macs do, but like my Galaxy S8 has an ARM and a Qualcomm. It's like 2 processors or whatever.
Pretty sure everybody uses ARM at this point.
Yeah, so they're all affected to a little bit. Although so far the reports are that this is a minor bug. Those are not going to be experiencing performance losses. Intel,
x86 architecture, though.
Yeah. Intel is apparently going to be experiencing a performance loss of between 1 and 30%. I think.
I thought it was going to be more.
Wait, what do you guys
talk
talk? For people who don't know, what are you guys talking about?
Well, so here's what happens. I don't remember the name, but there's a thing that processors do that every processor made in the last 12 years does, which is it guesses what you're going to do before you do it. Now, this is to so what it'll do is like, so say you double click on an exe because you want to install a file, right? Before you click OK install, it starts doing that. It doesn't do it on your hard drive, but it starts doing that in the RAM, preparing for that. That's why if you click OK, sometimes you'll already be at 5% or 10%, because the processor's doing it ahead of time. It's guessing. Now, that is really where all of the speed increases over the last 12 years have come from in processors, is knowing what you want to do before you do and doing it first, is my understanding. I'm not an expert on this.
Well, I wouldn't... Okay. I think that's kind of like a tangent.
Sure.
I think the main story here is about the kernel.
Right. Well, that's what I'm getting to. So what happens is that they load these pieces of memory into... potentially kernel memory or like admin memory if you're on Windows or whatever, into memory. They load these pieces of code into memory that you have not yet given permission to execute. And what happens is that there is an exploit to read that from the memory, even though you haven't given permission to execute. Something that might take an admin password could be taken out of the memory because it's trying to run it ahead of time.
Sure. I think. So AMD is not as vulnerable to this. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm pretty sure they won't see any performance losses because they won't.
That's what I've heard. I've heard there's 3 things. Meltdown is the one that's going to affect performance. The other one I don't remember the name of affects everyone, but it's not going to affect performance.
What I've read,
mm-hmm.
which is in contrast, I think, to what you read.
Please.
Is that the workaround is what's going to cause performance problems.
Right, and that is
So basically what your computer does is whenever it has some process that it needs to do, it hands it off and says, hey, I need the CPU to do this thing. Mm-hmm. And if that thing requires permissions that are associated with like admins or like
root.
Yeah, like information on your computer that is like, hey, this is how we add or this is how we multiply or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That kind of thing.
These are called system calls.
Yeah. So when it does that, it goes, hey, I'm going to hand off this process to the kernel because the kernel is what handles that. Mm-hmm. I don't need to know what the kernel is doing. I just need to know what it spits out. Mm-hmm. Problem is, there's a hardware bug in all of the processors mm-hmm. that makes it such that when you're making a call, but you're not sure whether or not it's okay to do that, mm-hmm. Essentially, it's like saying... It's like somebody walking up to a bar and saying, like, hey, I want to get a beer. And they're like, I don't know if you have an ID yet, but I'll start pouring the beer. Mm-hmm. You know?
Exactly. And that's what I was trying to describe earlier. Yeah, so they start doing the task, and then if you deny it, it'll throw the task away. Because it starts...
But in most cases... Yeah, but the hardware problem is like... It's like, in most cases, what happens is the task is complete before the check is done, mm-hmm. and then the check is irrelevant, right? Yeah. Because the task is already done. So... essentially what you have to do is do that check manually with software mm-hmm. and not with the hardware. And that causes everything that you do with the computer now to essentially be slower because you have to run this piece of software that says, I'm going to make sure that everything that you talk to the kernel with mm-hmm. has nothing that you could potentially get out of it, right?
So let's roll back here. Let's talk about the vulnerability. So what happens is that system calls that haven't been approved yet end up in the memory, I guess the RAM, because it's not actually on the drive yet.
Okay, so this is another thing. So in most cases, so here's the thing with Linux, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a change that just happened. I don't know, maybe it was yesterday. I can't remember when it was going to be rolled out. But basically, your kernel sits somewhere in memory, right? A lot of exploits are based on like where something sits in memory.
Oh, right, yeah. So modern kernel development randomizes memory addresses every time it's loaded.
And so the vulnerability here is potentially exposing where the kernel addresses are.
Mm-hmm. To give full control, eventually to give full control of the kernel, which is right.
Basically everything that your computer does, right? So you have access to everything.
So what's happening is that a JavaScript file in the web browser could execute code that it doesn't, as far as I understand, I haven't seen the proofs of concept, it doesn't have permission to do. It could try to do something like, restart the computer or something, give a signal, and it would be denied that permission. But before that would happen, the processor would start loading that into memory, assuming it would be given permission to, and then if you could find that in memory and have access to where the kernel information is in memory, which is a very
right. You could essentially backtrack where the kernel like addresses are, which is a problem because you could just read those addresses.
Yeah. So and then you could, with that information, then you basically have full control over the computer, right? It takes a couple steps, but that's where you're going for.
Right.
So this process, I should learn the name. It's some kind of speculative whatever. Every processor does that.
They named it something really funny because everybody hated it.
Intel does it the worst, and the way that Intel does it needs to be stopped.
Well, it's because they allow speculative calls.
Well, all the processors do it, but AMD is not being affected by the performance.
Well, speculative calls are like something that AMD is like shied away from.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
This is the reason why it's going to hit Intel processors with a process decrease.
My understanding was that everyone was doing speculative calls, but the way Intel had implemented it was the problem. Maybe they're the only ones allowing speculative system calls or something like that.
Yeah, I think that might be the case.
Okay.
But fundamentally, the problem is not that the way that everybody understands that the thing is supposed to work. The problem is somebody printed the wrong die and then they made the thing and then the hardware gives you access to it.
Well, I think, a lot of the assumption is that Intel had one concern and that was being fast and they didn't really care about security. Whether that they knew this was going to become a vulnerability.
I'm not sure if that's really a fair thing to say.
No, it might not be. The response Intel
I don't really
had
care
today was
about, because I don't work for Intel or anything, but...
I have a question. Mm-hmm. When you say kernel, is it like Colonel Sanders or like a kernel of popcorn?
So
the second one.
Kernel means it is...
now I want some popcorn.
God, actually, I'm not an expert at describing the kernel. Kernel is the very basic part of the operating system. So you have the basic input, output, which is the BIOS, which boosts the computer. And the next thing it loads is the kernel, which is basically everything that is needed to run the computer. But it's not like Windows Explorer or like Internet Explorer, Google Chrome or whatever. It's just the basic.
Basically, if you want to know about this, take like 101 like software engineering or whatever.
Yeah,
I'd rather just get popcorn.
When you have to do something,
get some fucking popcorn.
So,
whenever you want to do something and your computer's like you need administer permissions to do that, that's because it might be trying to modify the kernel, and that's not something the regular user should do.
Right.
Like delete system32, right? Like that's just deleting the kernel. Right? Is that what that is?
That's how you fix a computer.
Oh, okay.
It's the classic way. So just to set this all up, you guys kind of dove in, but without what you're talking about is the current situation where Intel released information that
I
was
trying to simplify
their processors are basically
Intel didn't release the information. That's the problem with Intel.
Okay, but what is it you guys are talking about?
Well, so basically,
not the process, but what it is that was.
Can I just have the reins here for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
Essentially, there's a manufacturing problem with all Intel chips.
From the past 10 to 12 years.
12 years.
12 years.
Yeah. That manufacturing problem cannot be easily solved.
Right. It's a hardware
That problem is going to be solved with software, but because that hardware is supposed to be efficient, the software that's there to replace it is going to be very inefficient. Right? And because of that, everybody who you definitely should download this update because otherwise your computer is going to be vulnerable to malicious stuff. But everybody's computer is going to see a performance hit that uses a CPU like this.
So what I've read, they say 1 to 30%, probably most people around 5%. The good news is that most stuff you're doing, if you're watching YouTube videos or whatever on your browser, doesn't make very many system calls. Even I read playing games and even 3D rendering doesn't. You'll make 1 or 2 system calls when you start the process, and then you're just using...
Generally speaking, most video games, especially like high graphics fidelity stuff, is usually bottlenecked by the GPU rather than the CPU.
Right, and even calculations being done by the CPU are not necessarily system calculations. Now, there's some stuff where you need to do system calculations, like accessing the network, but it's more like 1 call every few seconds, so it really won't slow you down too much. What this slows down are the Amazon EC2 and the Google, whatever they call them.
Server stuff.
Yeah, cloud servers. Anything that is a computer that is emulating other computers in a VirtualBox style situation, because it's a whole computer inside of a computer, as it were, they're constantly making system calls, and they are going to experience that full 30% efficiency hit, which basically as a customer equates to like a 30% cost increase because you have to buy more servers to have the same server that you thought you had.
I'm looking at my computer now. I have I'm in dire need of a computer update because I got mine in 2010.
Yeah.
It was a 2009 model.
You have an Intel CPU.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Intel Core Duo.
Every Mac since Power PC has been Intel.
So, and I've noticed the past year has been especially shitty for my computer, but like in the past couple of weeks, straight up stuff just is taking forever to load. Well, did this happen all at once, or is this a gradual thing where everything's starting to fail?
No, they haven't updated yet.
So kind of what happened is earlier in the year 2017, someone noticed this. A lot of disclosure happened, and in October, Google started making their patches, and I guess other people started making their patches. I don't know which patches have been released. They weren't even going to announce this publicly until January 8th, but people found out ahead of time. And so the
Linux repos were updated like I don't know. I feel like it's got to be like a month,
maybe early
month
December,
and a half or something. But they removed all the comments from it.
Right. They removed the comments, and I think they even removed like some of the code from the public eye or something like that. I don't remember. I remember reading.
I don't think that was the case, especially for like Linux people, and they're like, oh yeah, open source everything.
But they have a line that literally it's. If the processor is not an AMD processor, run bug fix or something like that. It's good marketing for AMD, is what it is.
It's not marketing at all. It's like a fucking Intel blunder.
Yeah, but people were commenting like that's just gonna be what they use for the next commercial. Just like that line of code that says, if it's not AMD, run bug fix.
Yeah. That's kind of funny, I guess.
But yeah, so that's basically the point is that it's a hardware bug, but it's so physically ingrained in the silicone that the only way to fix it is with software. And yeah, I mean, it needs you need new silicone to fix it.
We got some silicone dildos right inside the fucking computer. That's how it works out.
The only way to fix it with software, and the software basically has to say every time you want to do a system call, you have to get my permission first. And so that something that might have been really quick before that used a lot of system calls is now having an extra step added that will slow it down. Yeah. But it matters more if you're trying to do like 1,000 system calls a second or whatever. If you're doing one every couple of seconds or whatever it is.
Well, it's going to be respective to like what kind of software you're running.
Mm-hmm. What you're trying to do. Ultimately, like we said, I think gaming, rendering, even stuff should be mostly fine. Anything you do in your browser, you mostly won't experience this. If you were going to experience the slowdown, you would know already. You'd work for a cloud server company or whatever.
I mean, that's an interesting esoteric question about like, would you notice how long it takes for your loading bar to get to 100%?
I mean, you might not. It's like my laptop has an i7 and it's only 2 years old. It was supposed to be a pretty nice System 76 laptop when I.
Well, what I'm saying is essentially how much attention do you pay to how much time it's going to take to do that?
Well, I was gonna say,
if it's going to be like 20% more. Would you even notice?
Well, I was going to say, like Dan mentioned about his computer, my laptop over the last 2 years has already slowed down a bunch. When I think about it as a slow computer, so I might not. If it takes a couple extra seconds to load something, I might be like, this computer's so slow, but I wouldn't necessarily blame it on the i7 chip.
I guess the margins are not as big, right?
Mm-hmm. That's true, and that's true too. Like if it takes 2 seconds to load Netflix or whatever, the difference is like 2.4 seconds. That is pretty unnoticeable. Or what? 30%?
Yeah, so it'd be like 2.6.
2.6. That's pretty unnoticeable. I mean,
you could count that.
You could count that, but
But
I mean,
are you?
the average user
But
going
the question
to.
I'm posing is, are you counting that? Right? Like, are you every time you load Netflix, are you counting how long it takes to
2.5
load it up?
seconds? No, I don't think so.
No, Lars does. He's kind of like Rain Man when he watches Netflix.
So I think fundamentally, the story here is about a company that made a mistake, but ultimately it's probably not going to matter.
It probably isn't. Well, the interesting thing is that we don't know exactly what's going on at Intel, but realistically, probably they just released the Coffee Lake CPUs this year. They probably have a couple years of research and development going into their CPUs. So the question is, are they going to throw those away, or are they going to keep releasing CPUs that are going to experience this bug? And how long is it going to take to develop CPUs that aren't experiencing this bug?
So I think this is really just like a fable about how capitalism doesn't work if you have monopolies.
Mm-hmm. Right, because for people who don't know, Intel is the biggest company in the world of CPUs. AMD exists, and I think AMD exists basically exclusively because if they didn't, Intel would have a monopoly. So there's definitely been times where Intel have helped AMD out to make sure that they don't... Because if Intel ends up with a monopoly, they'll get broken up by the government.
I think that like when you're in a situation where two companies are literally the biggest in an industry...
Do you think that's still a monopoly?
That's a monopoly.
Sure, Verizon and AT&T,
Right.
yeah.
Didn't the Intel CEO, like, right before this happened, he sold, I think it was...
He sold $28 million
$20 million in shares.
$28 million.
Suspicious, to say the least.
It's the same thing as Equifax, too, which is honestly why this doesn't really bug me, because ultimately, what is someone going to get? Best case scenario, if they get full root of my computer and access to all my passwords, they might find my social security number. But
they already got.
They probably already leaked that. So,
good luck getting anything.
Who cares, right?
However, the difference is, like, this is relatively self-centered, but the difference is, like, everybody in the world uses processors.
Right, I mean, JavaScript, right? Like, most people, I think...
The Equifax thing was, like, pretty much limited to the United States.
That's true, yeah. There are probably, like, 1.5 or 2 billion people online, right? And there's, so that's a lot more people. And when you talk about... some people go through their settings and disable scripts, and I think Java by default doesn't run in most modern browsers, but JavaScript by default runs in every browser, and that's what it takes to pull this off.
Sure.
And you could probably do the same thing in PHP, which I don't think most people disable.
Yeah, and they totally play like this weird little shadow game where it's like, hey, is somebody actually using this tech, or is...
Right, and that's the question, because this is a very complicated thing. It's not easy to do. It took a couple months this year to
I
pull
suspect,
off the...
I suspect that, like, an organization kind of like the CIA, or any
NSA?
similar organization...
NSA.
Yes. Probably would have the resources to reasonably have this tech.
Ultimately, the
But
question...
whether or not they do or not is really kind of like a coin flip to me, right?
Well,
but either way, they probably wouldn't expose it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have definitely documented history of the NSA going out and buying exploits just like anyone else does and not releasing them, and then someone posts like a Microsoft 0 day and then it gets patched, but the NSA had that information. The question ultimately, because this is such an obscure and kind of weird exploit, is the person who privately disclosed this the first person to think of it? Did a Russian think of this 6 years? Because it's 12 years worth of CPUs. Did a Russian think of this 6 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 10 years ago? Did the NSA think of that? If they thought of it, they probably exploited it. It might have taken some time.
Well, I think it's clear that nobody would just randomly think of this.
Right. I mean, but they were trying. Right. If they were trying to, but the question is, did they?
It's
find
probably
it?
more of a situation where like somebody discovered it rather than like thought. Like, because there's a difference.
Stumbled into it.
Like, if you're just a genius and you're like, oh, yeah, I know all these things and how they work, and this is how to get past it. This is much more like a blunder.
Well, I'm in no means a NetSec expert, but I feel like if you're trying to find a vulnerability in a computer, your first thought isn't, I'm going to break the CPU. Your first thought is like, there's something in user land that accidentally has root permission, and I'm going to fucking exploit that, right? So I feel like it's unlikely that someone was aiming to find a CPU exploit, but like you said, if someone stumbled upon it, how do we know it hasn't been exploited for years?
Well, I think the ultimate answer is we don't, and we
don't.
probably won't ever.
Mhm.
And again, like I come back to this thing, it's like, and this is the weakness of a monopoly, right? When you have, like, capitalism at its best is like, hey, if something doesn't work, then it dies, and somebody else picks up the flag and runs with it. And that has its own flaws, but when you let something run so far like it has in so many industries in the United States, where like several companies control the entire market, you run into situations where somebody is making a decision down the line, and that decision is a bad decision, and then it affects everything, and now everybody's vulnerable.
I think what you guys are trying to say is that in my computer there's a little cartoon bug, and he's going and he's eating different parts of my computer chips.
That's a worm.
The bad news is that you are vulnerable. The good news is that your social security number was leaked earlier this year by Equifax, and it doesn't matter. Now, we've gone long. We've probably bored most people, although I hope someone was interested, because it is a really interesting topic to me, and it sounds like it's interesting to you as well.
It's a very specific topic.
It is very specific, and it's definitely something
but
I
it's
don't know
big
enough
news.
about. It's huge, right? I mean, if it's only Intel, it's half, right? It's half of the computers about. And
I'd say even more than that.
More, yeah.
Probably people use more.
Well, yeah, I mean, because all the Macs, right? Every Mac is in.
Yeah.
So if it's only the Windows computers that even might have AMD, or I guess Unix and Linux. But my System 76 Linux computer has a fucking i7, and I'm so mad. Whatever. I watched Netflix on it.
What might be interesting is that like all of the old Intel chips might become really cheap now.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, speaking of old stuff, certainly I know in my experience in the kind of world of learning about programming, you talk a lot about computers that are still online from the 90s. And I don't know how many are still around, but you get...
Probably not a lot.
Someone posts a server and it just goes and it runs. Yeah, but how many computers are still online from 2006 or 2008 or whatever? Like after...
Servers
Windows
are kind of different than personal computers, though.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like sometimes a server just goes online and just stays online because it works. And so that is a scary thing of like, whether or not, everyone gets updates on their personal computers, there might just be some
do you remember the whole thing about like Heartbleed?
I do remember Heartbleed. I don't remember what the deal was, but I remember when it happened.
I mean, essentially it was like people didn't do a software update because they weren't managing their thing. It was like this old...
It was like was it PHP?
Yeah, I think it was PHP.
And it would load a random string into memory.
That's all the technical details. Yeah. All you really need to know is that there's a vulnerability by people who make websites. And those websites were vulnerable only if they hadn't updated to the next version.
And that's what I'm talking about. Like even XP,
but nobody
right?
did like if it works, then nobody fixes it, right? Mm-hmm. So when people are just like, oh yeah, my website works, they don't update their version of PHP or whatever it was, and you end up with a situation where like 20% of all the websites on the internet are vulnerable to this extremely easy exploit that like almost anybody can learn in like 10 minutes.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about is like how many computers out there have been uploaded as a server and just left alone and will be left alone. Of course, have the Unix epoch coming in 20 years or whatever. But until then, might just have this bug and no one cares.
Fundamentally, I think we can come back to like the whole capitalist thing here and say like if somebody doesn't have the wherewithal or the common sense to go back and manage their incredibly sensitive information if they have any,
right,
then they kind of get deserved.
The problem comes down to like, what if that incredibly sensitive information is my social security number? Like, I'm not the one who has an unsecure website.
Then they should fold as a company, which is a problem because
they
that
should
doesn't
be held
happen.
responsible. Like the banks, hold the banks responsible. Start with that.
Yeah.
Which
is something that doesn't happen.
We've gone on for a long time, and Dan will tell me to cut the fat. But here's what I'll say, Dan. We had an episode last week, or 2 weeks ago, that was an hour and a half long, and it got the most views we've ever had. So I will not cut the fat, Dan.
No, you need to cut the fat. You need to cut the fat.
It's time to end. We are going to end. I have a couple notes. I'm sure everyone else does. If you care at all, first of all, this show is available in iTunes, the Play Store, Stitcher, and of course on SoundCloud.
Is it officially on iTunes?
Well, it won't be until tomorrow, but I'm going to put it there.
Okay, cool.
I have to pay $5
Dan needs to talk a lot more because we were talking a lot.
We cut him off.
Guys, let me say this about computers. When my son gets on the computer, it's like he says he's just on there for 5 minutes, but then he bogs down my hard drive and I can't use my computer. I can't check my Yahoo, and I think it's because my son goes on the computer too much.
One time you fixed someone's computer, and for years they're like, "You broke it," and you're like, "No, dude, no, I didn't. No, you broke it. You downloaded some shit."
He's putting viruses on my Hotmail.
I've started, Dan, a new podcast. It's called A Part of the Art.
A Part of the Art.
It is a show where myself and Thomas Hutchings, a.k.a. the Spaceman Spliff, talk to local artists about mostly music, although we did talk about a book in the first episode. We talk from the perspective of people who write music and people who like music. We're talking about what inspires us and what we make. It is excellent. I recommend it. The first episode is available on soundcloud.com/LarsInTheStudio. It will not be in the Stitcher feed because you only have one, or the RSS feed. You can only have one show at a time, or it'd be confusing.
His name is Spaceman Spliff.
Spaceman
Sounds like it's inspired by the Antwoord.
It is inspired by Spaceman Spiff from Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
But spliff is like what people smoke, so it's like a clever little.
Yeah, they say that in a the Antwoord song.
Do you smoke at all?
You know what? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Who knows?
Do you?
Yeah, sometimes.
It's illegal. You don't have to hide it.
I did not even ask Dan, and before even asking him, I was going to, but I knew he had a busy week. He already made a logo for us. He called it just a title card, but it's so clever because it says a part of the art, but the A it's got a line and it goes around and to the bottom and it connects to the word art, and so is part of the art.
That's a complete accident.
It's very clever.
I'm glad you found meaning in it because I didn't think it did.
So we're not gonna. I've got a thing at the end that'll have our social media. But Geronimo, what do you have? What are your projects and social media you want to pimp?
I'm not very active on social media.
That's okay.
If you can leet speak Captain Nemo, you can find me on Twitter. I don't post.
I don't post, but you can follow me. Cornucopia, Mondays at 9, Drink and Draw. I went on Tech Tuesday.
There's a Drink and Draw coming.
You went to this Tech Tuesday?
No, I went last week.
Right.
And I mentioned it for you because you didn't show up.
I didn't. I wasn't able to.
But I called out. I said Dan would be upset if I didn't mention the Drink and Draw.
The Drink and Draw every Monday at 9 p.m. I wasn't there this time, but I think it will be next time. January 6th, that's this Saturday, the Arcade Rodeo at Game Pub, a.k.a. Shoryuken League. Geronimo and a bunch of other local developers will be showing off their games. It should be pretty cool. January 9th, you got the Instrument Petting Zoo at WoW Hall. You can go there, and for free, you can play different instruments, touch different things.
That's kind of cool.
And
we got some good didgeridoos.
Oh, sweet. I hope they have a theremin. They had one at the musical petting zoo at U of O a few years ago. It was super fun to play with.
That's what I got.
Well, excuse me. Oh, my God. January 20th, Saturday, bar camp. It is neither a bar nor a camp, but it is a time where up to 100 local creators get together.
Did you say 7th?
It's the 20th is what I thought.
20th. Oh, okay.
20th. January 20th. What did they do? So you all show up, and then everyone who wants to give a talk says why their talk would be good, and everyone votes on it. So you don't know what the talks are until the vote happens. So you just show up. You don't have to be a talker. I'm going to try to talk about podcasting. I may not get voted to be allowed to do that, but I'm going to try.
What do you think is the chances of that?
Well, there's 100 people, so I figure at most 50 are going to be interested, assuming 100 actually sign up. I don't know how many talks I get. I feel like it's a pretty good chance I'm going to get to do it. I'm pretty stoked. I want to. I'm going to show up wanting to do it, so I hope I do.
I'll come to the back row like a dad who got there late and root for you.
Thank you.
And I'll wave to you.
You do
on
have
the
to sign up,
stage.
though. You can't just show up.
You just have like a sign that says "Dad loves you."
It's the WoW Hall. You can get in.
First person. Yeah,
I'll sneak in.
Well, that is the end of our show. Thank you all for listening so much. It got a little bit off topic, but I think it was a good conversation. I was hoping to talk to someone about CPUs this week because no one I know cares. What Up Eugene is recorded at the Moments Ago Studios in Eugene, Oregon. I am your host and producer, Lars Feighauser. You can find me at Lars in the Studio on Instagram. You can email me, larsinthestudio@gmail.com. Our SoundCloud page is soundcloud.com/LarsInTheStudio, and I am also on YouTube with, you guessed it, Lars in the Studio. If you like What Up Eugene and want to listen to it in your favorite podcast app, it is available in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. But you can also use tiny.cc/whatup in any player that accepts an RSS feed. My co-host Dan Koss can be found at Dan Koss, that's Koss, then you do it again on Instagram. Dan Koss does all of the social media and graphic design for the show. The show very much wouldn't exist without him, so go ahead and follow him, and if you have a graphic design project, hire him. Thank you for listening.
Student moments.